Jeffrey Goldberg says he was included in that text chain.
If the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic is being given access to this kind of information, weapons systems and packages and timing and weather in Yemen and all kinds of information about sequencing of particular events, then obviously there's a security breach.
Goldberg spoke to ABC. President Trump initially told reporters he was not aware the highly sensitive information had been shared 2.5 hours after it was reported. He later appeared to joke about the breach. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says nobody was texting war plans. He spoke about Goldberg.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again.
Just 2 hours after Goldberg received the details of the attack on March 15th, the U.S. began launching a series of airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. South Africa's president says the claim white people are being persecuted in his country is a completely false narrative. It is his latest attempt to push back against allegations made by President Trump, Elon Musk, and some white minority groups in South Africa. Actor Gerard Depardieu began testifying in day 2 of his trial on sexual assault charges in Paris, saying, "I won't hide, it's hard." In his gruff, deep voice, the 76-year-old former Oscar nominee said it's very emotional for him to be in the Paris court answering charges of assaulting 2 women on a movie set in 2021. Israeli strikes killed at least 23 people in the Gaza Strip overnight into today, according to Palestinian militants. According to Palestinian medics, as hospitals are flooded with dead and wounded. This is AP News. The Kremlin confirms Russian President Vladimir Putin has given President Trump a portrait Putin had commissioned of Trump.
Spokesman Dmitry Peskov says it was given to Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, during a visit to Moscow earlier this month. In an interview with Tucker Carlson, Witkoff described Trump as clearly touched by the portrait, which he described as beautiful. In 2018, Putin gave Trump a soccer ball that the Secret Service checked for listening devices before Trump gave it to his son, harkening back to a Soviet-era gift to a U.S. diplomat that turned out to be bugged. Putin has sent gifts to other U.S. presidents, including Joe Biden and Barack Obama, and sent a portrait of George H.W. Bush to the former president to mark his 90th birthday. I'm Ben Thomas.
In South Korea, a motorcyclist who fell into a cavernous sinkhole that opened on a street in Seoul has been found dead. I'm Ed Donahue, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Paul Frombley. Highs level off around 53 today under mainly cloudy skies, northwesterly winds 8 to 15 miles per hour. Lows dip down to about 32 tonight, partly cloudy. A mix of clouds and sun tomorrow. Daytime highs approaching 54. Temps a bit above average Thursday and Friday with highs from the upper 50s to the low 70s. Slight chance for showers Thursday, chance for storms on Friday. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 34 degrees.
Style at every turn and power for every drive. Your new Porsche awaits at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Stop in today to browse and test drive the latest models, including the all-new 2025 Porsche Macan 4 Electric with its impressive 402 horsepower. And right now, qualifying leasees can receive up to $12,500 in electric vehicle rebates. Find style, power, and your new Porsche today. Shop electric Porsche models and more by visiting the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park or PorscheExchange.com.
Chicago's progressive talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, progressives, and welcome to the March 25th, 2025 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278, Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and of course, email me at richard@wcpt820.com. Posted a new item on Substack. And so check out things over there. Catch all of our shows, of course, by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's where you can get Choose Views, short version and long version, the feature shows, and all the rest. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez, The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath. Out Chicago and our other great shows, make your way over to heartlandsignal.com. And today, live, local, and progressive, Joan Esposito will be joined by presidential rhetoric scholar Dr. John Murphy of the University of Illinois, legal analyst Jill Wine-Banks, and Heartland Signal's Rich Eberwine with 3 stories you might have missed from our digital newsroom. Live, local, and progressive weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, Progressive Talk. Chicago's Progressive Talk, you guys, for 20 years. And then this evening, driving it home with Patty Vasquez. As always, check her out, 5 to 7 p.m. Tomorrow's show will be joined by our great contributor, Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63, and Illinois State Representative Edgar Gonzalez Jr. Okay. Devin and I were having a couple of... Oh, listen to me. Today, on this show, at 7 o'clock, we will have State Senator Cristina Castro be with us, talking about cell phones and legislation there. And then author and professor Dante King will be with us in the 7:30 hour. Dante's been with us before. He's got a few things to say about this sort of wackadoodle conversation around DEI and taking away treasures of national information. You'll see. You'll see. It'll be interesting. But that being said, oh, mercy. Devin and I were spouting some pretty salty language a moment ago. But I'm going to get to Choose Views news. And then when I finish that, and if we go to the break or whenever, we're going to talk about some of these things that just had Devin and I, we would have gotten in trouble with our parents for the language that we were using. This morning before we started. All right, guys. So here we go. Let's bring you up to speed on a few things that are happening in our world in the Choose Views newsroom. Stocks did rally as tariff fears eased a little bit yesterday, driven by optimism that Trump's administration tariff policies will be more targeted and potentially less disruptive than initially expected. Yeah, and I got a boat to sell you. All 3 major indexes advanced, led by the NASDAQ. One analyst told Bloomberg that any reduction in potential tariff impacts will be an upward catalyst. Yeah, but we've already seen people who've had hits to their various accounts because of this insanity. Anyhow, manufacturing slumps, unfortunately, as these costs do spike. A key measure of U.S. manufacturing slumped this month already, pressured by higher materials cost stemming from the tariffs. So you see the conflict there. The markets may have a sense that things are going to move in a better direction, but when it gets down to the, sleeves rolled up, elbowed parts of manufacturing, different story. The S&P Global Flash March Factory Index fell almost 3 points to 49.8, a level below 50 signals what? Contraction of that market. S&P chief economist cited a sharp rise in cost as suppliers pass tariff prices and hikes onto U.S. companies. Prices are charged to manufacturers, a climb at the fastest pace since February 2023. Making me mad, y'all. Hyundai, somewhere in between, has announced a $20 billion investment in the U.S. manufacturing sector yesterday, including a $5 billion Louisiana steel plant that will employ about 1,300 people, along with Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company and Japan's SoftBank. The South Korean automaker is one of several international conglomerates to reveal new reshoring efforts at the White House ahead of its April 2nd, I almost said April 3rd, tariff deadline. And speaking of tariffs, U.S. is to tariff with Venezuela for oil trade. Trump announced a 25%. Why does he say 25%? Why not, 28% or 20%? What's the big deal with this? No, 25%. It can only count. Oh, that's right, because that's what's on his hand. Oh, see, Devin is a genius. 25% tariffs on U.S. imports from those countries that buy oil and gas from Venezuela. Isn't that insane? Punishing countries, I should say. In a post on his social media platform, Trump said that the levy would take effect on April 2nd. The president has said that Venezuela sends members of the Trinidad gang to the United States, which has designated that group as a foreign terrorist organization. We're going to talk about that a little bit. 23andMe, unfortunately, files for bankruptcy, and battle DNA testing company 23andMe has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and its co-founder, Ann Wojcicki, said she has resigned from her position. In a post, Wojcicki said she will remain on the company's board, and she still aims to buy the company's assets. 1 million people have given company DNA samples, which could be sold in bankruptcy proceedings. Now, that's not the coolest thing in the world. All right, guys, there you go. Some of the things that are happening over at the Choose Views newsroom. All right, so what were Devin and I talking about with our salty mouths before we go to this break? And when we come back, we'll talk about it a little bit more. You just got to come right out of the gate and say this. How is it that Devin and I were having a conversation, private conversation about different things, and then we didn't know anybody to know about it? No, we don't want those guys to know about it. So we better not, absolutely better not, let them in on our little surprise that we're putting together for people. So it would probably be a really good idea that Devin and I took all the measures possible to make absolutely certain that if we were planning this surprise, whether it be a good surprise like a birthday or a subversive surprise like we're, going to do something we shouldn't do, under all circumstances, if we, between the two of us, said, this is between you and me, dude, don't tell Eric, don't tell Lady B, don't tell Joan, don't tell Patty, that we were going to plan a surprise or something for, let's just say, for Stephanie Miller and Tom Hartman. I'm just pulling this together from the hip as Devin and I were sort of chatting about. If we were going to involve those people, but we were having a surprise for Tom Hartman and Stephanie Miller because they were coming to Chicago. But because we've all texted them and or emailed them, in some capacity communicated with them, but potentially, we don't know. We want to make absolutely certain that they weren't on the text chain about the surprise that we had for them when they came to Chicago for, let's just say, the 20th anniversary. And I'm kind of making this up as we go along to make the point. It's on me and Devin to make absolutely certain that only Joan, Patty, Lady B, and Henry get the text. It's our responsibility. They put us in the position to make sure that Stephanie and Tom don't know about the surprise when they come into the 20th anniversary. We don't get the luxury of doing anything other than making sure that we don't send it to anybody else. Intentionally or accidentally, it only goes to those people who are the on-air folks and the engineers. Not even management gets a peek at it. It's on me and Devin. So if by chance Stephanie Miller would have called me and say, hey, Chew, man, what's up with this party you're throwing for me and Tom? The surprise on the WCPT anniversary that we're getting some special broadcasting award. What's up with that? I don't want to come up on stage and be embarrassed. And I'm looking at Devin like, what happened, dude? And Devin's looking at me like, well, I don't know. I was busy doing something else. We don't get that luxury. Period. So, you guys know what I'm talking about. And I wanted to make, because we're not privy to all the information, but I wanted to make the point obvious that these are the folks that are supposed to be the smartest, fastest, strongest, bestest people. And we're just talking about a party that Devin and I are planning and a surprise with a tight network of people. And we blew that. And now Stephanie and Tom know they're getting awards. That's on us. We don't get to run and hide and pretend like, oh, well, Devin didn't, open his email properly. And Devin says, well, Richard didn't check his text. That's on us. We don't get to say, well, I don't know how it happened. And so, MAGA, when you run around talking about how we're the best and we're the smartest and, Joe Biden's old and all this garbage, and that the previous defense secretary was a DEI hire because he was a black man, you all can go kick rocks. Plain and simple. Now, I don't need to know all the definitions and who did, but the president's responsibility at that point is to take responsibility and say, we messed up there. Think of how much more powerful that would have been if he had said, look, we messed up there. We dropped the ball and we'll do better. But no, MAGA, y'all elected that. That's what you elected. And and now we replaced a career successful man with the drunken sailor. So there it is, y'all. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
WCPT 20th Anniversary Replay 2018.
Lori Lightfoot, a candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago. Welcome to Back on the Beat.
It's my pleasure to be here with you, Dick.
Why do you think that people should choose you as opposed to the current mayor?
Well, first of all, I think that the vast majority of Chicagoans believe, as I do, that the city is going in the wrong direction. There are a lot of good things that are happening in the city, to be sure, but that largesse is not being spread across enough neighborhoods to enough individuals and families. We have too many neighborhoods in our city that look like wastelands. They have real high poverty rates, high unemployment. There's no economic base in those neighborhoods. You drive down the streets and there's vacant lot after vacant lot, and it looks like something other than the city of Chicago in 2018.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chu.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Progressives, welcome back to Choose Views. We're going to be hitting you with some clips, and we definitely want to take your calls because I want to hear your thoughts on this just absolute stupidity. Devin made a good point during the break, and of course, he and I were bouncing salty language again. When President Obama, and it's kind of funny how Devin and I don't talk about this, but we end up syncing it up. When President Obama came in office, you guys remember the conversation, and Devin said it best. Devin, you repeat it. I don't want to screw this up.
I'm probably paraphrasing, but President Barack Obama said it took like 3 years. When he first got elected, they gave him a brand new cell phone. It was 3 years before he could even get his old cell phone back. And it just makes you wonder, it's like Pete Hexer's like, did they not give you a new government phone? Did you transfer all your old contacts in there? How do you have more? And I'm saying, here's the thing. JD is not like a super common name. It stands for something else. How many other JDs do you have in your phone?
Right. I mean, we're sitting here just like scratching and going, what? But that's who MAGA wanted. That's what they wanted. They wanted this carnage. They wanted this. They said that, oh boy. And then we have the Attorney General. Pam, I'm so bondy. Miss Crockett better watch herself.
The important issues.
Right. Devin said let's focus on the important issues. I mean, Dev, Representative Crockett better watch herself. And now she's worried. Now Bondi's running around talking about if you post pictures of Elon Musk when he was with less full hair, not quite bald, that it's an act of domestic terrorism? I mean, listen, y'all, Hegseth and Bondi must be sipping from the same sippy cup. They must be. Slobbering on each other and all that. They must be. Because I'm like, Pam Bondi, girlfriend, you should focus on, like Devin just said, things that matter. Let the House do their thing. They're going to throw stones at each other. They're going to throw rocks and other things at each other. Let them go do that. Rather than kissing Elon's behind. Oh, don't talk about what I wanted my boyfriend. So, to that end, we've got some clips we're going to drop on you guys this morning. Let's start off with our good friend, the former President Barack Obama, on what he said about unnecessary cuts to our federal programs and what it would probably cause. Let's go with that, Devin.
In order for us to be competitive, we're going to have to make some smart choices right now. Cutting our education budget, that's not a smart choice. That will not help us compete with China. Cutting our investments in research and technology, that's not a smart choice. That will not help us compete with China. Bringing down our deficit by adding $7 trillion of tax cuts and military spending that our military is not asking for, before we even get to the debt that we currently have, that is not going to make us more competitive. Those are the kinds of choices that the American people face right now. Having a tax code that rewards companies that are shipping jobs overseas instead of companies that are investing here in the United States, that will not make us more competitive. And the one thing that I'm absolutely clear about is that after a decade in which we saw drift, jobs being shipped overseas, nobody championing American workers and American businesses, we've now begun to make some real progress. What we can't do is go back to the same policies that got us into such difficulty in the first place. And that's why we have to move forward and not go back.
There it is. That was President Obama and the 2012 election and the debate with Mitt Romney, the one where you saw them sitting at the table. And let's go to another Illinoisan who's just speaking truth, y'all. Just telling it like it is, and how we could have elected such tragedies and weak A folks to represent our country. MAGA, this is on y'all. It just is. I know I go after the Dems in certain days because I want us to do better, but MAGA, this is completely on you guys. Let's listen to what another great Illinoisan had to say, and just standing in the void, Governor Pritzker.
I talked about agriculture just a minute ago, but I want to focus on veterans just for a second. Let's face it, many of the people in the rural areas of my state, veterans and farmers, voted for Donald Trump, who gave us Elon Musk. And many of those people are now showing up. They were at the Medicaid forum that I held to say, wait a minute, you're taking away my health care. What's happening? The Republican Congressman Darren LaHood, didn't show. He was invited to be there, and he didn't show. And that's what's happening. The Republicans are hiding their heads. They want Elon Musk and Donald Trump to do the dirty work for them when they know that this is the job that Congress is supposed to do. But Republicans don't want anybody to know that they're the ones doing it. They'd like to leave it to the unelected, the wealthiest person in the entire world. That's Elon Musk.
Yeah, see, just say it. Say it loud. And Governor Pritzker, I almost said President Pritzker. Governor Pritzker speaking to it. You know, LaHood didn't show up. We trash talked, but he didn't show up. So what do Dems have to do? They got to roll into Republican districts unapologetically right now. Call every one of your congressmen or women and your senators and say, get your behinds into a Republican district. If you don't, right now, it's almost like you could say to our Democratic members of the House and our Democratic members of the Senate and even some state legislators, in your state, call them up and say, I don't give a darn about legislation right now, not literally. What I care about is you going and snatching some of those votes and getting some people off the couch. And to Pam's point yesterday, talking about how voter suppression has impacted not just folks in blue communities, but folks in red ones as well. Call your representatives and say, take your behind to a Republican district and make some noise. If you make the noise, the media will follow. They just will. That's what needs to happen right now. Governor, people can say whatever the hell they want to about my governor, but I got his back. Because he is the voice that is the loudest, that's the most cogent, most pragmatic, and making the most sense in the country, in the Democratic Party. I don't care what anybody else says, and I'm not forsaking anything with Vice President Harris. She's determining where she's going to land next, so give her time. But you name me another Democratic leader right now, and I got much love for another one that we're going to play a clip for in a second before we hit this break. You name me another one that's standing in the void like Governor Pritzker is, and we can have that conversation. But that's what the Dems need to do. They need to be on media outlets every single day. I've been saying this for weeks now. So, to the Bondi one, also known as Pam Bondi, the pretend attorney general who's picking fights with congresswomen. We do have a little clip from what Representative Crockett had to say about Pamsky coming at her.
When Pam Bondi, though, says, tread carefully, what does that even mean?
Yeah. All it means is that she's attempting to get me to say, oh, I'm going to be scared and I'm just not going to say anything, because they are willing to literally break the law. I mean, that's what we've seen them do. They are ignoring court orders. They are ignoring what our own laws are. When we look at things such as impoundment, things like that, this entire administration is rogue. And this isn't about partisanship. I keep trying to tell people that we are living in the time of good versus evil, right versus wrong. And right now, when we are looking at the black letter of the law and they are deciding, I'm just going to ignore it, then they are wrong. That is clear as day. And right now, they are going after anyone who decides that they will challenge them, whether it's the judges that are sitting on the benches, whether it is lawyers that have decided that they were going to represent their clients to the best of their ability, and most of them won against Trump and his administration. Basically, they are trying to get rid of all voices of dissent.
Yeah. And so Pam Bondi decides she wants to pick a fight with a U.S. Congresswoman, which is not, do your job. Stop threatening people for posting online. Because if that's going to be your, see, this is where people sometimes forget about the power of the lower, not just courts, but the power of legislatures on a state level as well as a federal level. They have power to do things when elected officials step out of line. Or in this case, when people who are appointed to a position in the federal government step out of line. And Representative Crockett didn't use those words because I think she was probably being somewhat cagey, which she is. As much as she is a flamethrower, she's very cagey. This is what people forget. They think that I'm just going to say it. They think that she just brings bravado, good bravado. But no, she's also very cagey. People forget she's also an attorney. So she understands the law on a lot of levels. So that fear that she puts in people isn't just because of what she says, but she understands the law well enough to back up when she makes a statement. And she's very cagey with what she says about what people say to and about her. So there you go. 3 folks, 2 from Illinois, by the way, and 2 of color. Oh, they must be DEIs. And 1 that's Jewish. Oh, my God. Standing in the void, doing the work. Y'all know Governor Pritzker's Jewish. Barack Obama and Representative Crockett are folks of color. People like to say it. No, they're black and mixed and all those other wonderful things that we all are as a community. But they're standing in the void. And I'm proud that two of those folks are from the good state of Illinois. And we'll give Representative Crockett some love, even though she's from Texas. But they're doing the work, guys. That's what matters. They're speaking out about what they spoke out in terms of President Obama's debate points that he made. But it still holds true today, 12 years later. They're almost 13 years later. Still holds true. You cut like this, you cut into the muscle, you cause problems. Any good surgeon will tell you that. You don't want to cut into the muscle. And these folks are not good surgeons. And they're certainly not stewards of our largesse. Devin, let's take a quick break, my man. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Save big on everything for your next project when you shop at Menards. Give your walls the best finish possible with Pittsburgh's Paramount Interior Paint and Primer in one. It provides the most advanced protection, excellent scrubbability, and delivers true one-coat coverage. Choose from thousands of color options and refresh your space for spring. View our entire selection of paint products today on Menards.com. Plus, check out the weekly flyer for plenty more great deals happening this week.
Save big money at Menards.
Style at every turn and power for every drive. Your new Porsche awaits at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Stop in today to browse and test drive the latest models, including the all-new 2025 Porsche Macan 4 Electric with its impressive 402 horsepower. And right now, qualifying leasees can receive up to $12,500 in electric vehicle rebates. Find style, power, and your new Porsche today. Shop electric Porsche models and more by visiting the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park or PorscheExchange.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see high in the mid-50s. Northwest winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, partly cloudy skies develop, a low near 32. By Wednesday, sunshine, a high 54 degrees. Thursday, we'll have a slight chance for some rain showers here. Partial sunshine develops, and a high around 58. Friday, chance for rain, high of 72. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 33.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
It's what I want to hear.
All the time.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820. Chicago's Progressive Talk.
We are back, Progressives. May 3rd, tickets are on sale. Tickets are sold out. My goodness. Oh, man, y'all can't come now. Tickets are now sold out for our May 3rd anniversary broadcast. Wow. At Max and Benny's Restaurant, Deli, and Bakery in Northbrook. But we hope you'll tune in that day to hear Hal Sparks, me, that guy named Richard Chew, Scott Duff, Joan Esposito. We'll be broadcasting live 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. with some special guests. And be sure to visit, guess what, theheartlandsignal.com/anniversary to see all of the photos we've been adding to the page. They'll go way back to 2005. And speaking of Heartland Signal, make your way over, obviously, for the great articles that we have there, just to give you a taste of a few that you might want to check out. Former Minnesota State Senator Justin Einhorn was part of that prostitution sting that led to an arrest of 9 men. You'll have to read the article. I don't want to spoil it for you. But oh my goodness. But this is the party of, family values? That's what they try to call themselves, Devin. Another one, Ohio GOP advances efforts to weaken child labor laws. The Republican-controlled Ohio legislature is advancing an effort to allow 14 and 15-year-olds to work until 9 p.m. on school nights. I thought that they should be at home studying, being home. Listen, Devin, they're going to make me curse today. What 14 and 15-year-old do you know that should be out working really on any night, but certainly on a school night. I don't know a 14 and 15-year-old. We want to cause more havoc for our youth. I thought we cared about. The reason I wanted to read these two is because the Republican Party always puts out there about family values. Well, first of all, a Republican gets caught in a sting with 9 other men that weren't drag queens, by the way. A prostitution sting. Family values, okay. And then y'all want to make our children, and I say our children because I don't have any children, but 14 and 15-year-olds mean something to me. But Ohio wants to make it easier, or frankly, we'll put a different word on it, less restrictive, so that children 14 and 15 years who should be studying, getting some sleep, sitting down talking to mom and dad, or their older siblings or their younger siblings. How about a 14 and 15-year-old at home helping in the overall raising and family processing of their 9 and 10-year-old younger sibling? How about being at home for that, Devin? This is crazy. That's your Republican Party, though. Make your way over to Heartland Signal. You can read the article in more in depth there. I don't know. Somebody must have spiked my coffee this morning because, no, see, it's on Devin because Devin gave me that look. He has this look, guys. That look will get you going. It's just craziness. I kind of am laughing at myself because I got another one I want to hit you guys with. I don't often watch the news. I catch certain things. I plug into certain things during the day because I want to get an idea of what's happening, who's saying what. But I don't sit and just, watch for hours. But yesterday I knew that the Republicans were going to be in front of a judge to talk about, and the Democrats, not so much Republican Democrats, but the case of this appeal with regard to the deportation hearings was going to be in front of a judge. So I wanted to plug in a little bit to that. And there's a lot that I can say, and I'm going to just try to keep this as simple as I can. If you can find information on this, find clips, you should do it because it's worth the listen. It's quite a bit of time you'd have to put into it, but here's what I will just present to you. Judge Patricia Millett is a sitting judge in this particular appeal regarding the deportations that took place two Saturdays ago with the so-called gang group that they were, shaving their heads and bent over, and those y'all know the story. This guy named Drew Ensign, I think that's the correct pronunciation. It looks like Ensign, but I think it's Ensign. He's a Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Probably Pam's buddy that likes to try to pick on Congresswomen. At the deportations hearing, this is what was it was fascinating to me, and I knew it became fascinating when I started talking to the television. So what am I talking about, for those of you who didn't catch this? On a number of occasions, Devin, she asked him very specific questions. Devin, what color is your hoodie? And Devin's answer would be, it's blue. This guy was answering the questions, and I'm simplifying this for the purpose of making the point. He kept sort of not avoiding the questions, but he kept answering the questions in a way that said that he didn't hear the judge. Like, that's not the question. I didn't ask you what color your T-shirt is, Devin. I asked you what color your hoodie is. And so he was in this sort of kind of Trump way, deflecting from answering the question by answering another question. And on a number of occasions, she just kept coming back. That's not the question that I'm asking you. So, and it was a little bit of word salad because she had this is what happened. She was, from the very beginning, she was giving him the space to kind of present his case, answer the questions, talk through some things. She knows how sometimes the attorneys have got so much in front of them that they've got to keep it in order. She got that. I could tell by listening to her cadence that she understood that. She was giving him room. But then after a number of occasions on different topics, she would ask a question that he would answer something else. She just her window of niceness was shortening, and on a number of occasions she caught him not lying, but not only not answering the question, but not remembering that earlier in this hearing, he said something that was true to what actually happened, but he referenced it the wrong way in his next point. Now, I know, y'all, this is getting into the weeds, so I'm going to keep this as tight as I can, because the point I want to make is this. There's 2 points, actually. She kept saying to him that she wasn't questioning him as the attorney representing the administration or anybody else on the statute itself as it relates to the Wars Act. She was questioning the implementation of the statute being unlawful. And he couldn't answer that question. He couldn't respond other than to say, when she would state that this is based on statute, the improper use of it, he would say, I disagree with you, Your Honor. But she kept coming back to say, it's not the statute, it's the implementation. And what I finally made as an assessment of this is these folks just aren't ready. And she finally had to kind of drill down on him and let him know, you're not getting it. What is your case really about? And it says, this is the second point. The first point is they weren't ready. The second point is that this is an example of who the administration has with their hands on the levers of power, or not even the levers of power, but just representing what they're doing, which is unlawful. They can't even understand the fact, and these are attorneys that should know that that's all the judge was asking. She wasn't challenging if the statute was lawful, but if the implementation is being properly executed. And it was this tireless merry-go-round of this guy either not being prepared or wanting to make sure that the boss, or bosses, in this case Pam and Donald, were happy with him just constantly trying to rebuff the judge, trying to push back and say, I disagree with you. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the release of this knucklehead, communication with the journalist is out there. So you Trumpers and you maggots, you all own all this carnage and craziness. You really, really do. And the further point I want to make about this in terms of this deportation, this conversation, we're spending, people don't know this, Devin, we're spending a lot of money deporting people that may not necessarily have gotten due process. And if the judge, if these are reversed and we have to deal with that, there's a potential for lawsuits. There's a potential for it, which will cost us even more money. And I say potential because I know there's some real legal heads out there that would say no, but there's always a potential. So to that end, this group of fools, craven fools, who are all about DOGE and reducing costs and efficiencies and all that, are actually costing us more money because of their reckless behavior and their, frankly, ignorant behavior or arrogant behavior, or a little bit of both. And I also want to know, you're talking about getting gangs out of the country. What about the Russian gangs? I don't see any raids taking place in, down in southern Florida or with Bravka in Los Angeles or in Brighton Beach or other areas where we know there's been intel for a number of years of Russian gangs in the United States of America. I don't see any raids going on there. If you want to get gangs out of the country, or quote unquote European gangs, or folks that have ancestry in Europe that are part of gangs now in the United States that don't look like the folks coming from the southern border, I don't see those folks being rounded up. So what is this really all about? And then you send these incompetent knuckleheads in front of a judge that tried to give them an opportunity and they couldn't even deliver there. So I'm just MAGA, GOP in general, you all own this. And then you get into the conversation about what Governor Pritzker talked about as it relates to, farmers and veterans, unfortunately, who voted for this that are now being harmed directly. You all voted for this. And as much as I can get after the Democratic leadership and Dems in general about not showing up and not fighting hard enough, at the end of the day, those 78 million, it said, yeah, I want the dude that's 34-time convicted felon. You should have voted against and stop, like yesterday when we were talking with our guest, needing to always have to vote for. In this case, voting against was the right call. And y'all blew it. Yep, you did. So, time for another break. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
T-Mobile home internet is all about speed, value.
What you doing, Zach?
I'm rehearsing. There are so many benefits. You got to talk fast.
T-Mobile home internet ranks #1 in customer satisfaction for home wireless internet by J.D. Power.
Wow, you are good.
Try singing it. T-Mobile has price lock.
They won't raise your rate on internet.
Hulu and Paramount Plus on them.
Get T-Mobile home internet all in for just $55 a month with auto pay and any postpaid voice line.
Additional terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Wendy's is open till midnight or later, so you can give in to the craving and go night mode. Now all of your favorite menu items just got their bedtime extended. You can get what you want even later, like the Baconator with 6 strips of bacon, or the perfect fries and Frosty Duo. If you're up later, then so are we. So go ahead and pull through the drive-thru. When the craving hits, go night mode at Wendy's. Open till midnight or later. All right, see ya later.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, hours may vary.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, progressives, welcome back. I may not be able to get to all your texts. I'm trying to. I got a text that said that the Dems are still supporting illegal immigrant criminals. And the Republicans are still supporting illegal European criminals. I mean, come on. This is crazy. I mean, wake up, folks. And I respect and love all you guys that send me text messages, but give me a break in that garbage. The Dems aren't supporting illegal criminals. Democrats want to see illegal folks who are not here legally, I'm going to put it that way, of any, group, not here. That's just how the law is. And Mayor Johnson talked about that in terms they're going to do what there's constitutionally, state-wise and U.S. constitutionally required to do when it comes to that. But this other garbage is crazy. So, all right. We talked a little bit about the Muskie one and all that. But I want to come back to something that I don't want to miss as an opportunity to discuss something that has happened in terms of voices and folks being out there and fighting and pushing and doing the work that needs to be done. And you guys heard about, you may have even seen the rally that took place this weekend. And we've got a clip that Devin and I put together that I think would be just a good example of the fighting that needs to happen across the country from all Democrats. This is why I said earlier in the show about Dems, y'all need to get out in the Republican districts and make some noise. And this is a clip from Representative Cesar talking with Jen Psaki.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Greg Casar of Texas. He's the chair of the Progressive Caucus, and he was with Bernie Sanders and AOC at that rally in Tucson just yesterday. Now, Congressman, I just showed a bunch. I probably butchered some of the numbers there, but the point is tens of thousands of people are showing up at these rallies, which is tremendous. We've seen massive crowds at this Bernie Sanders Fighting the Oligarchy Tour is what it's called, bigger than some of his presidential rallies. You were there. What was it like on the ground?
It was really incredible. And Jen, let's be honest, right? Last time we were talking about how immediately following Trump's reelection, we did not see the level of grassroots energy that we saw 8 years ago. But now I think this is the answer. The energy is back. And the most important thing that elected Democrats can be doing right now is supporting this energy and channeling it in the short term to pressure House Republicans to stop doing so much damage to everyday people. In the medium term, it's what can help us take back the House of Representatives. I believe we could do it by big margins. And then in the longer term, to transform the Democratic Party into the kind of party that not only defeats Trump and Musk, but defeats the kind of ideas that created them in the first place.
No question about it. And you're right. When we were talking about it, there were kind of, I would call them green shoots of hope out there, right? There were people showing up at town halls and asking questions. And it was like, what is this a sign of? How significant? And this is a whole different thing. I mean, one of the things that motivates, I think, is when Trump and people working in his administration say crazy, insane things like what Howard Lutnick said about Social Security. I mean, it kind of encapsulates, I think, why people are so angry right now. I mean, what did you hear when you heard it? And do you feel like that kind of thing and pointing it out to people could become part of the rallying cry?
Look, there were so many people at these rallies who had never come to a political event before in their life. There were people at these rallies who said, you know, I heard Bernie talking about how the billionaires were running the government behind the curtain before. But now you've got goons like Lutnick, billionaires out doing it in public, talking about taking your grandmother's Social Security check. You have Elon Musk, the richest person on earth, bragging on social media every day about taking your money for himself. And so, look, when I got invited to this rally in Tucson, we were supposed to be in the high school gym. And we thought it would be great if we could fill a whole high school gym. The line for that gym wrapped not around the school, didn't wrap around the block. It wrapped around the next block and the next block, and it took over the entire high school football field. So that anger and the energy is there. And what people want to see from Democrats is that we're willing to stand and fight for them. And I think that if we stand and fight, that courage will inspire courage. People can knock doors, organize their workplaces, organize town halls, organize their neighborhoods, and drive this into the huge amount of turnout and popular backlash against oligarchy and big money that we need right now. And I think that message brings together all the segments of the Democratic Party and even brings in those independent and disaffected voters that may disagree with me and some people watching at home on this social issue or that one, but believe fundamentally that working people should have a better shot in the economy and that the billionaires shouldn't be running the government.
There you go. That puts it right spot on. That hits the bullseye. And most definitely we may post this on my show page, and you guys can send me an email and I'll get it to you if you want it directly. But the point that I want to come back to, there's two things I want to acknowledge. We received a clip that I didn't get a chance to reference the other day that's relevant to where we are right now, to what Representative just said. I know it sounds boring, but calls and texts and letters matter. Remember when we used those to get MSNBC to remove Ronald McDaniel. So now fast forward to where we are now. That was a year ago. Fast forward to where we are now. Contacting your representatives is our way, our tool to fight with. And I frankly think right now another person that needs to get phone calls and text and the office needs to bug the hell out of him is Howard Lutnick. I'm not even going to give him the name. You know, we know that he's the person that is now in the role of, Secretary of Commerce. But call his office as well, too, and let the people that pick up the phone know. How in the hell can you say that your grandmother, I think he said his grandmother, his 94-year-old grandmother, would not be whining and complaining if her Social Security check doesn't show up on time? Well, we don't care about your grandmother. It's not about your grandmother. That just goes to show the disconnect. And there's a couple things I've been waiting to say about this, and so here we go. First of all, Howard, it's not about your grandmother. It's about the grandmother of someone who's sitting in a rural community or in a metropolitan community that's all they have. They don't have the backboard of you and your billions of dollars that, oh, by the way, Howard Lutnick, and for you guys who don't know who he is or his background, his history, he's one of the executives at the company Cantor Fitzgerald. A little bit of history about that organization. They were the firm that during 9/11, that when the building was attacked, Many, many members were above the floors. Their offices were above the floors where the first plane hit. So many of those folks perished. So to that end, part of the money that the company has made for years was off of pension plans that they managed. And monies that they received from individuals for individual investments. Guess where that money came from? And I did a little bit of research. I'm not going to go down the path too far because we don't, one, have the time, and two, I'm not going to, get too far in the weeds on this. Those people were using money from their Social Security payments to make investments, small investments. So how in the hell does Howard Lutnick get away with saying, my grandmother wouldn't be whining, and the ones who are whining are fraudsters? I think the way to deal with Howie is to pick up the phone and call the office of the Secretary of Commerce and say, Howard, your grandmother doesn't matter in this conversation. The grandmothers that matter, the mothers that matter, the disabled children that matter, that are in communities all over this country, that's who you insulted. That's who you insulted, Howard. And either ask him to apologize, step down, or watch his words. Tread carefully, as Pam Bondi would say. We don't need someone like Howard Lutnick, I almost said knucklehead, to be telling people that it's okay to cut Social Security, to tell the country it's okay to cut Social Security because my grandmama wouldn't be upset if her check's late. Well, guess what? She's probably going to call you up and say, hey, Howie, my check's late. I need some money. And you'll wire it to her or have a messenger take it over to her place of residence within the hour. So call his office and let him know to either shut up, step down, or watch his words. Because he was way out of line. And I wanted to say it in my way. Because I understand how a lot of the money that fed the Cantor Fitzgerald system of investments came from people who had very little money. Well, came from pensions being managed for retirement, and came from people who were using some of their Social Security dollars, as so many people do, not just toward that investment, to invest in things. They have some extra money, they're going to put it into an investment. Exact dollars, I don't know, I don't care. What I'm saying is, Howard, watch your words. And folks across the country, call the Secretary of Commerce's office and say, straighten up and fly right, dude. We don't care about your grandmother. We care about the grandmothers, the moms, and the children who may be on disability and receiving Social Security payments. But MAGA, that's who y'all elected. That's who you all elected. So, when we come back from our break, we're going to be talking with one of our local legislators here in Illinois, State Senator Cristina Castro will be with us. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, men of all races across the country volunteered to join the fight, despite the United States Army being heavily segregated. Black enlistees were mostly assigned to combat support roles. But this did not stop Lieutenant Colonel Paul L. Bates, who knew of the racism and pushed his soldiers to achieve excellence. The 761st Tank Battalion was formed in the spring of 1942. It contained 30 black officers, 6 white officers, and 676 enlisted men. The unit donned the nickname the Black Panthers, wearing patches on their uniforms with a panther on it and the slogan, "Come Out Fighting." And in 1944, the 761st was assigned to General George Patton's Third Army in France. General Patton gave a colorful speech to his crew, and the Black Panthers became the first African-American tank squad in World War II. And by the end of the war, the Black Panthers had fought further east than every other United States unit, receiving 391 decorations for their heroism.
Imagine all the things you dream of under one roof. You're thinking of eBay. Fashion, collectibles, car parts, it's all there. Go find the thing that keeps you up at night. eBay. Things people love.
AP News. Good morning, I'm Ed Donahue. The editor of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, was asked what he was thinking after he was included in a text chain he says included operational details of forthcoming strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen.
I think I've discovered a massive security breach in the United States national security system.
Goldberg told ABC there was more than just the Yemen mission mentioned.
A lot of resentment directed at European allies of the United States, which obviously enhanced the credibility of this chain because everybody in the chain sounded like the people I know who are in this administration.
The National Security Council says the text chain appears to be authentic. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says nobody was texting war plans and called Goldberg a so-called journalist who likes to peddle hoaxes.
The hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
Democrats want a full investigation. More Russian attacks are reported around the Ukrainian capital.
Ukraine's State Emergency Service says the Kyiv region was targeted by Russian shells in the early hours of the day, with firefighters battling to put out fires at a warehouse and elsewhere, while in the eastern Kharkiv and Sumy regions, strikes destroyed several buildings and vehicles, according to the service. Ukraine's General Staff reports that Moscow carried out 76 aviation strikes and used nearly 800 drones against Ukrainian positions and settlements. The strikes follow Monday's efforts by US negotiators to make progress on a proposed partial ceasefire in the 3-year-old war, meeting representatives from Russia one day after holding separate talks with a team from Kyiv. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Palestinian militants say Israeli strikes killed at least 23 people in Gaza. This is AP News. A request from the man accused of killing United Healthcare's CEO.
Luigi Mangione is asking for a laptop in jail to help with his defense. He pled not guilty to state charges of murder as an act of terrorism for shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson back in December on a New York street. According to his lawyers, prosecutors are not keen on the request, saying some witnesses have been threatened. Mangione's lawyers say the laptop would not be connected to the internet, only used to view 15,000 documents and look at thousands of hours of case video. Similar provisions have been made for others in lockup. A trial date has not been set, but Mangione's next state court date is in June. Julie Walker, New York.
Waymo says it plans to bring its driverless taxis to Washington, D.C. and Miami next year. I'm Ed Donahue, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see high in the mid-50s. Northwest winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, partly cloudy skies develop below near 32. By Wednesday, sunshine, a high 54 degrees. Thursday, we'll have a slight chance for some rain showers here. Partial sunshine develops and a high around 58. Friday, chance for rain, high of 72. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 34.
It's nice to know someone is on your side. Mark Drugs always has your back. No two dogs are the same. A dosage form or strength of medication that works for one dog may not work for another. A compounding pharmacy like Mark Drugs is here to help you with your pet's medication challenges. We'll be happy to help you when your pet is sick. After all, it can affect the whole family. That's why we give our four-legged patients customized medications to make it easier for them to take. For pet medication problems, first see your veterinarian. Then talk to your hometown independent compounding pharmacy, Mark Drugs. If you'd like to know more about the ways we can personalize medication for each individual patient, we'd be happy to help. We are a compounding pharmacy, which means we can prepare the medication prescribed in a strength and dosage form that meets the patient's needs. Ask us how our pharmacy can help. You have a choice when it comes to your health care, and a great choice is Mark Drugs and Roselle and Deerfield, where you get better health and care for you and your pets. Check out the Pet of the Month at markdrugs.com.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Before we went to the break, I was talking about the just inappropriate comments from Howard Lutnick, and I referred to his grandmother, and I was incorrect there. It's his mother-in-law. But as Devin, so clean up on aisle 7. And I'm looking at my notes and saying grandmother, but no, yeah, it's like, no, Richard, your notes say you know this. It's his mother-in-law. But that being said, thanks to the folks that sent me text saying, Richard, you mean mother-in-law, and appreciate that. And to that end, though, Devin made the best comment. He said, it doesn't matter. You got that part wrong, but the fact that he's saying that about Social Security, is just it's insane. And it's also inappropriate. It's insulting. It's all these words. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's showing that. So this is the piece I want y'all to get. You know how so many times you get this criticism about the Democratic Party has forgotten about the middle class, regular class, working class people. Really? The stuff that's been coming out of the Trump administration these last, 55 days or whatever it is a clear example that the Republican Party doesn't give a darn about the middle class, our children in our schools. The statement, the piece earlier about what's happening in Ohio. They're the ones that don't care about the middle class. Y'all got hoodwinked, maggots. You just did. You did not listen. And I got a great text that said this, and I'll get to our wonderful guest who's got something to talk about that's super important about our children. This is a question. This is a text that I received. I believe in my heart that the biggest smile is coming from Kamala Harris. She warned the American people about this clown, Trump, and what he would do. Farmers voted for this clown, knowing darn well that the majority of their workers are illegals. Who is going to work the fields and harvest now? So, in any event, it goes on. But the point is that, I doubt that she's smiling. She's probably in pain about this because it saddens her, I'm sure. But these are the kinds of things that the disconnect is not from exclusively or primarily from the Democratic Party. When someone like Howard Lutnick makes that kind of a statement, and talk about an elite, Devin, I think that would be categorized as the elite. All right, this morning we have with us in the 7 o'clock hour one of those state leaders. She's from the 22nd district, includes a bunch of communities, which she'll tell us about, but has proposed what I think is a really interesting and unique ban in classrooms. And we definitely want to have State Senator Cristina Castro, who's with us this morning, talk about her illustrious career, but also this most recent bit of legislation that you proposed here in the state of Illinois. Madam State Senator, welcome to Choose Views.
Thank you, Richard. Wow, that was a great introduction. I appreciate that.
You deserve it because you've been putting in the work. I said this earlier. Our folks here, our legislators here in Illinois, our governor, our lieutenant governor, our AG, our comptroller, all of you guys are putting in the work. I've said this so many times, Madam Senator, y'all don't have to get along and agree on everything, but we know you're leaning in to get things done. And that is what I can speak to and support and be one of your big advocates, because I believe in you guys, and I'm going to be critical, but I'm also going to be the guy that's complimentary and there to help you get the job done. So we appreciate what you're doing, and that's why I wanted to give you that intro, because you are getting the work done. Take a moment, Madam Senator, and tell us a little bit about, your ascent to being a state legislator here in Illinois.
Well, this is starting my 8th year. I was first elected in 2016, sworn in 2017. I kind of joke, my background, I served 8 years on the King County Board, so I have a little local government experience. But when I ran for the state Senate, it was an open seat. I always say I was not the one everybody wanted, but I might have been a little bit out in fundraise, but I wasn't outworked, and I won my primary then with 67% of the vote. And a lot of it is a lot of what you're talking about, Richard, knowing the district, knowing, what our middle and working class folks need and wanted representation in Springfield. If you remember, there was a gentleman by the name of Bruce Rauner who was decimating Springfield. And when I ran, I felt I could bring something different in perspective, and proud to have continued to serve the great cities of Elgin, Carpentersville, Hoffman Estates, Hannibal Park, Streamland, and a portion of Schaumburg. And I have had the honor of them sending me back each of those times that I've been up for election. So I have worked on many issues, everything from making sure we have, passed the most equitable Clean Energy Jobs Act, worked on that, introduced the original version of it, have passed many laws protecting women, workers, making sure there's funding for training and development, help small businesses, defend and continue to increase the role of our community colleges, just to name a few. But I have taken my own life experiences and have applied them in everything I do down in Springfield and given them that look. And I think that's what people want, right? They want you to represent them, to hear them, and to hear even when you don't agree, because sometimes it's okay not to agree, right? Because they might give you a perspective you didn't think about in legislation, right?
Madam Senator, and I appreciate you saying it that way. I have kind of built, I guess, a little bit of a reputation of saying, listen, I'm going to ask tough questions, but it's not about tough questions. It's about, we know that we, as family, we don't always agree. We are. That's where the good stuff is when you kind of disagree and say, okay, but we still see the same end. We want to finish. We want to get across the finish line. And sometimes our approach may be a little bit askew, but doggone it, if we're fighting for that good end, then we're all going to benefit. And one of the things, and I do remember, this is one of the things that is kind of a little bit of a laugh, Madam Senator. You've always been one that's been fighting for working families and really never afraid to ask tough questions of your colleagues on your side of the aisle, but most definitely those across the aisle. And that's one of the things that has become part of your reputation, is you're not afraid to ask the tough questions because you're not afraid to get into the fight for your district specifically, but for the city, for the greater state of Illinois, and that's seems to be where you are these days. So kudos to you in that space.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And I continue to fight. And, our friends on the right, sometimes people want to make them as the big bad wolf, but many of them are people, right? They represent districts, and sometimes they do bring a perspective you might not have thought about. And I think that is what we need. I think our people expect us to defend them, but also to not do the job, right? And so I think that is one of the things that I pride myself is I'm not afraid to reach across the aisle and have conversations. And hey, it's okay to agree to disagree. Yeah. I think we have forgotten that too.
Yeah, and that's part. I think sometimes that has gone too far. But at the same time, it's not just disagreeing. It's like, okay, let's try to keep our eye on the prize, which is to get us to where the end is. And oftentimes we do a better job of that, I would say, as Democratic legislators and progressive liberal Democrats. But so let's talk about a bit of legislation that you have recently been at the tip of the spear on when it comes to this proposed ban on cell phones in Illinois classrooms. Walk us through that a little bit. What brought you to the point that you felt this was legislation that needs to hit the desk of the governor, and what some of the work you put in to get it to that point? I know it's got to get through the Senate still, but so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sure. So it's Senate Bill 2427 for those that are following. It's banning cell phones during classroom instruction. This is something that I had been working on and researching since last summer. And a lot of it was I sit on the National Council of State Legislators, and I had been noticing other colleagues from across the states had been looking into or had been introducing legislation. And I look at it, And the other thing is, too, the governor saw that I was working on it, and he obviously was very passionate about it, so we are working this bill together. I'm sure you've heard him talk about it as well.
Yep.
But every student in Illinois deserves a quality education, right? Parents, teachers, and child development experts agree personal cell phone uses are getting in the way of distracting from student learning, right? Multiple teachers in my district and across the state have reached out, even school districts, and asking us to take decisive action to reduce this inappropriate and distracting use. And I know there's like a little bit of controversy, but almost 3/4 of high school teachers polled by Pew has said cell phone distraction is a major problem in their classes. And so one of the things that we started to work on in this bill is kind of setting the floor and not the ceiling on school districts putting a policy in place when it comes to cell phone use in the classroom. Again, it allows local school districts to implement this policy. Right now, the state it wasn't a mandatory requirement. The reason we did that is we have some school districts right now that have their own policy, and we didn't want to upend many of their successful policies. So we pretty much set the floor. You probably heard during the committee hearing, the superintendent for Prairie Area School Districts talk about the effectiveness of using pouches.
Right.
You don't have to use pouches. You can find different ways to limit the use of cell phones in schools. Some schools may decide the elementary level. Some school districts may not want the elementary school level to have access to that and saying they ban that. We wanted to give some flexibility, but we did have some initiative direction with some exemptions. Obviously, if they have an IEP plan, a 504 plan, there's also exceptions for students with disabilities, exceptions for English learners, and emergency situations. Again, we leave it up to the district to fine-tune that model, so that's why our bill is the floor, not the ceiling.
So the floor, if I can maybe put this in, I guess, layperson's understanding, this is just to create a foundation that says we understand what the teachers are saying, that it's a distraction, no matter how we put it. And let's also make sure that we acknowledge the fact that there are going to be situations where a device may be required by a student if they have a medical issue or something of that nature. We get that. But the floor is, if I'm understanding this correctly, is designed to say, we hear the teachers, we hear the administrators, and we understand that it's a distraction. Now let's create some reasonable guardrails so that at the end of the day, the most important thing happens when all of our children walk into a classroom, and that is that they get educated. And that the distraction from them getting educated is removed at that time. So let's talk about that, because I remember, I can't remember who said it, but it may have been you, so I apologize. You were talking about when you're working, sometimes if you get a text in the middle of working on something, it's a distraction. And how a child can have that happen, and their ability to come back to what they were to the lesson. The classroom isn't as adept as a grown person. Help us out with how you process that. I don't want to take away your words.
So, no, I think you're right. I actually said that in committee. One of the things is, like, as legislators, we all have our cell phones. All of us do, right? All of us are creatures of habit. And as soon as we see a text, a notification, what do? We glance over and start looking at our phone. We get distracted. We may be in the middle of a conversation, and then we stop, right? This happens, if it happens to adults, it happens to kids and students, right? For students, it's even worse, right? You have, the more dealing with mental health issues and cyberbullying, right? And so that can create anxiety and panic in students when they know this stuff's going on and they start looking at it, and then they distract from it and they try to respond to it, and so on and so forth. By limiting the cell phone use, it allows the student to focus in on their teacher, on their classroom studies, and fully devote their attention to whatever their lesson plan is. Now, I will say the cell phone bill ban excludes anything that's been issued by a school district or a school, as far as, iPad for learning and learning devices, a laptop. That's excluded out of that, but it's dealing with, wireless devices that are not issued by the school. But I think one of the things, like, some folks get a little paranoid, but 13 states currently have laws, executive orders, or state education department policies requiring restricting student use on cell phones. And Florida was the first state to do it in 2023. So this is a bipartisan issue, right? This is not a left issue, a right issue. This is an issue that was supported unanimously out of committee because it's the right thing to do, right? To help kids focus in on their schooling when they're in the classroom.
Because the goal is, and I like what you said about this is not a left or right issue. Now, sometimes when it comes to legislation, and this is the part where people don't understand, an issue is necessarily left or right. It's an issue about all of us or all of our children. Our air quality is an issue that's not a left or right issue, because you and I could be standing next to three people that are Republicans and we're breathing the same air. So how could that be a left or right issue? It's how it's managed and how it's presented as legislation, and then what we do to fix it or make it better. And that's why this issue, to your point, and into the governor's, is not a left-right. It's a issue about our children. And the more we focus on bringing greater success to every child in the United States, and specifically here in Illinois when it comes to learning, we all win. So this is a little bit of an askewed question, I guess you could say. With the Trump administration leaning in hard about getting rid of the Department of Education, how do things like that, when you look at legislation that's about our children and education, how does that impact you?
I think when you look at, we obviously are seeing what's going on in Washington, and we're, as a state, I know the governor, the attorney general, and my colleagues in the General Assembly are preparing for the worst, right? And so I think one of the things that we will do, I think when it comes to this policy, it is, like I said, the floor. It is something most school districts either have partially done, but I think it's one of the things that's very important, right? Because, look, everything, again, social media, right? As those things happen real time, they distract. And our students need to know and be able to focus on their education. Let the adults try to worry about what's going on in the world today, and not get anxiety over it, right? Because many students will probably have anxieties like, is my math crap going to end? Am I going to be able to go to school? We don't want them to worry about that. That's what the adults should worry about. That's what us leaders in the General Assembly should be focusing on. And I know Governor Pritzker and his team have been watching this very carefully. So have we, right? I say we take it a step at a time. I know the executive order just got signed. I'm assuming right now his people, the Attorney General, and our folks are like diving into what does that mean for Illinois. I just want folks in the state to realize you have a great team of people that you have elected who are ready to fight and also protect our students and their students' educational success, no matter what's sent from Washington.
And kudos to you for reminding folks of that. They want to hear it. They want to see the results. What's next? And when I say what's next, in two pieces, Madam Senator. The first one is what's next with regard to this legislation, one, and two, what's next for you? You are always busy. You always got sleeves rolled up and elbows deep in making things better for your district and the state. So help us with those two things.
So I think the first thing I would say as far as the bill passed out of committee unanimously. So it'll probably pass the chamber when we return, either the first week of April or the second. So I look forward to passing this bill and handing it off to my good colleague, Representative Michelle Messman in the House, who's been working and negotiating the bill with me. As far as me, I always am open to helping and serving the Democratic Party, but I'm also happy and enjoying my tenure as the state senator from the 22nd District and continue to serve my constituents and the state of Illinois. So, look, we are at the beginning of sort of the beginning of session. We will start talking about the budget. Those conversations are ongoing, and obviously start moving monumental pieces of legislation till we end session at the end of May. But obviously I'm the chair of the Senate's Executive Committee, where we will hear a lot of these pieces of legislation, and I look forward to many of the discussions and negotiations in regards to that. So
that's fantastic.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I love that phrase. How can folks find you, get a hold of you, volunteer, whatever it takes to be a supporter of the hard work that you're putting in?
My legislative office, you can always look us up on Senator Cristina Castro.com. And you can always reach my office. My chief of staff is always ready. If you go to what we call ILGA, which is the government site where you can follow bills, you can click on members and you will get all of our contact information. You'll get a hold of our Springfield office that way, and that's ilga.gov. You can find us on there as well, and you can always reach out, phone call, email, however you need to. But I will tell folks on this listening in today, it is important to engage with all your legislators, not just me, especially on something that matters to you. As you saw, we have several thousand bills that have been introduced, and it is always nice to hear from our constituents on what issues are important to them or not, right? Which ones they oppose. So they should reach out to their legislators, even if they're in a red district or a blue district and they don't necessarily agree. They should always reach out to their legislators and let them know where they're at.
It came right from you. So sometimes I don't think they believe me when I say that to our listeners all over the country. Reach out, get involved. So State Senator Cristina Castro, representing the 22nd District here in Illinois and getting the work done. Thank you for being with us this morning, Madam Senator. We appreciate you taking the time. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll have you back soon, okay?
Yep. Thanks, Richard.
Have a great day.
Yep, you too.
Bye now. There it is, guys. She said it. If you don't believe me, she said it. Reach out. Contact your legislators. Here in Illinois, certainly, and then on a federal level. It may not be an issue that you follow, but it's one that if it's important generally, then reach out. She's telling you to reach out, and that's what we need to hear from more of our representatives, that they are willing to listen, and they want people to reach out, and they want people to participate in this process. So there you go, guys. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break now. We have another wonderful guest joining us at 7:30 hour. So let's see. Yeah, music's playing. That means shut up, Richard. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Hey there, it's Carrie Joy with your Work Money Minute. Today I'm going to share a story about me and my money. This starts in my 20s when I was what I will call an avoider. I was an avoider because I just felt like I was bad at money. I didn't want to think about money. I didn't want to do anything with money except make it and spend it and close my eyes and pray that the rent check would cash. I spent a few years beating myself up about not paying attention to my money until I started having a very short money meeting with myself every month. And those meetings taught me that with a little bit of effort, I could be on top of my money. I could know when it was coming, and I could know where it was going, and eventually I was able to make plans for it. So if you're stuck in the avoider trap, hey, I know what it's like. Invite yourself to a money meeting. I promise you it'll pay off. For more money tips, check out workmoney.org. Till next time, this is Carrie Joy saying, take good care.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
The average American spends nearly $1,000 a year on prescription drugs. But Dr. Edward Giardini, author of How to Save on Prescription Drugs, says smart consumers can save money fairly easily.
You always want to know what the retail price of the drug is before you use your benefit card, and shopping in general can really pay off. Local retail pharmacies' prices can be 3 or 4 times higher at one pharmacy or drugstore compared to the next. So you really need to shop around. If you expand your sphere of shopping to include mail order and online pharmacies, you can even get better prices.
The biggest money saver of all? Ask your doctor if simple changes in your diet and lifestyle could help reduce or eliminate your need for a prescription drug. With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Partial sunshine develops here for today. We'll see high in the mid-50s. Northwest winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour, gusting as high as 20. Then for tonight, partly cloudy skies develop, a low near 32. By Wednesday, sunshine, a high 54 degrees. Thursday, we'll have a slight chance for some rain showers here. Partial sunshine develops, and a high around 58. Friday, chance for rain, high of 72. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 36.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Always great to have a state representative on. And the broader conversation around this is someone like, when I say representative, I mean someone that's on a part of our state legislature. State Senator Cristina Castro spoke to it very clearly. She's in the fight, and she knows that reaching across the aisle is going to be sometimes necessary, and sometimes it's not. But the point is, a couple points. One, this is a representation of how our state is fighting. And from the top down, our state's fighting. And I know other states are too, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying other states are not fighting. They're blue states, or folks that are in red districts in a blue state, or vice versa, that are in blue districts in a red state. The point she made, which is very, very clear, we all have to be in this fight. And she, welcomes the phone calls and the texts and the emails to her offices to get involved. And I've been saying this, and we're going to continue to say it because we know it works. And I go back to what text I received earlier about how it worked with getting Ronna McDaniel off MSNBC, and how it's working now with folks contacting and showing up at town halls, and the list goes on. So this is what representation, good representation, can look like. And this is why I'm proud to have folks like that on our show, because they speak to it, and we want to continue to push them. As I said, criticizing and complimenting at the same time gets stuff done, because then we know what we're doing and what we need to be doing. Another person that's in the fight, that's been with us before, and has no worries about speaking his mind and putting it to text in terms of the books that he's written and the work that he's done. I respectfully call him Dr. King, but it's professor and human resources management consultant and author, Professor Dante King. Good morning, Dante. Welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back.
I knew I'd make you laugh. See, I caught you. I knew I'd make you giggle a little bit there. It's good to hear your voice, man. I'm glad you were doing well. I presume you're doing well. I'll make that assumption. But thank you for being with us this morning. And we always love having you on the show because of the fact that you are one of those other voices that speaks to, you speak to the things that a lot of folks don't want to talk about, candidly. They don't want to raise their head or their hand and say, yeah, we need to lean into this. We need to talk about it. And you have done that for a great part of your professional career, as we talked about in the past. But some recent things that have happened on a federal level have really kind of got you more than frustrated, and specifically in terms of the for lack of better words, the slashes, the cuts, the just disruption is the word that I'll call it, when it comes to some of these things that have taken place around the word DEI, and more specifically how the federal government, with Trump's executive orders, is ending certain programs, but not more importantly, as importantly, just the attempt to go after the great history of so many Americans that are of color, are black, or other, quote unquote, minority groups, if you will. So let's talk about that. Let's dig into this. I mean, we can start off with Jackie Robinson. I mean, let's just be honest. Who in this country doesn't understand the impact of Jackie Robinson, not just on blacks in baseball and blacks in sports, but as it relates to the country's move to be the great country that it so aspirationally wants to be? And correct me if I'm wrong, did Jackie Robinson have he was more of a centrist politically in his career. He leaned left and right depending on what he thought was right politically. But at the end of the day, he fought for things that made sense for all Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate how you're leading into this discussion. So Jackie Robinson was one of the people. I believe Medgar Evers was one of the profiles that they erased from the website. And I think we have to deal with this in terms that are very concrete and also candid. The contributions of non-white people in this country have never been valued. I mean, we can start with the institution of slavery and the monies that are owed to people who helped to create this country's gross domestic product. So, like, reparations are still due, and that will never happen, I don't believe. But the contributions of black and brown people have never been valued in this country, and that is what these white men know. And so when we hear about, for example, most of the employees being let go, or half of the employees being let go from the Department of Education because they're now streamlining that department and are headed to closing it, but most of the people who remain employed at that department right now today are white men. When we hear about these types of moves and then Trump's executive orders around, making sure that white people are not discriminated against, we have to understand that this government has always been in favor of promoting a pro-white agenda in every way. And I've talked about that on your show before, starting with the Naturalization Act of 1790, which established that whiteness was the predicate for citizenship, which meant that was then the main value system. So race is the main value system. And I think white people know it. As I talk about in my newest book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, white people are obsessed with race. And so in thinking about this in terms of my sister, Dr. Caretha Mitchell, she has a framework around know your place aggression. And the way that she defines it is the flexible, dynamic array of forces that answer the achievements of marginalized groups such that their success brings aggression as often as praise. Any progress by those who are not straight, white, and male is answered by a backlash of violence, both literal and symbolic, both physical and discursive, that essentially says you know your place, or you should know your place. And so that is what is happening in this current moment. There are moments prior to this moment where this has happened before, during and through Reconstruction, during and through the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. There's a moment of white backlash, and they use both local and state, federal policy to target non-white people. And that's what's happening in this moment as well.
One of the things and thank you for that, Dante, whether it be Jackie Robinson, the Navajo Code Talkers, the Harlem Hellfighters, Tuskegee Airmen, this just reckless, and maybe it's not even reckless, but the reason I say it's reckless is because, taking away information on Jackie Robinson from the website, but then putting it back, to me, is reckless, because if that's what you're committed to, then do it and stick to it. But they don't. They just showed their weakness. They blinked because they know it was wrong and they know it was racist. Mm-hmm. But that's why I say reckless. But you would probably say, Richard, it's planned, it's strategic, it's part of the dynamic, and I would agree with you. Yeah. So I'm with you in saying that it's both. It's reckless, but it's also strategic. It's planned. It's part of what's in the sauce, and it has been. And sometimes, Dante, people will say this, and I've corrected folks. When the phrase has been used, you guys are using the race card. Why is everything got to be about race? Well, it's because we didn't. Black folks and other folks of color haven't made this about race. Any of the conversations that are going on right now, to your point, is the obsession that, candidly, a large part of white America, even some that are calling themselves progressives or that have leaned in that direction of progressive liberal Democrats, don't understand how race has impacted their view and perception of the world that they live in. I mean, I know that you got your observation, and one that's written on that, and then in your latest work that's come out speaks to that. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Well, we didn't racialize this country. Non-white people did not racialize this country. White people have racialized this country and have decided that it is a legitimate factor or criteria by which we should recognize people, and have embedded it into every facet of this society. Every legal piece of documentation that we have has a category for race, and that has not been determined by non-white people. That's been determined by white people. And so we have to then deal with this idea that these human beings who really, when you look at, for example, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's work, she was a psychiatrist and a medical doctor, and she talks about this delusion that white people function within by associating themselves or attaching themselves to a color concept based on the reality that they cannot produce skin pigmentation, that they indeed are not white. But when you look at that need to attach themselves to a color concept because of what whiteness represented in European culture, we have to then understand that we are dealing with people who are delusional, who do not believe that people who can produce pigmentation in their skin don't deserve anything, or that they are less than them. But so in essence, we're not dealing with people who are white. We're dealing with people who are suffering from a delusion because they have attached themselves to a color concept that does not really exist, but it's the way that they have chosen to separate themselves from other people. And so we then have to deal with what she describes as a behavioral system, which is white supremacy, which is a compensation of the reality of them knowing that they are genetically recessive, and this hyper-focus of not being replaced by other people, by not being outdone by people who have the ability to produce skin pigmentation. And Dr. Alvin Poussant, who was also a psychiatrist, who died recently. He was a psychiatrist who worked at Harvard. But he describes a sort of white malignant narcissism as like this extreme arrogance and self-centeredness, the disregarding of feelings and the needs of others. He describes it as manipulative, and that it uses and exploits others for personal gain or pleasure, possesses an extreme need for power, exacts revenge against others upon critique, fantasizes about ways to gain more power or dominance over others, lacks conscience, regret, or remorse for actions and behaviors, delights in acts of cruelty and pain of others. And so we're dealing with people who are functioning based on an orientation of inhumanity. And that is what this is about.
And listen, guys who are listening anywhere in the country, following where you are. We're talking with Professor Dante King. I've had some people that just tuned in and asked me online, please mention his name again. So it's Dante King, Dante King.
Yes, please go to my website at danteking.com.
No, we definitely will get to that. But I want to come back to this as it relates to where we are currently with deportation. A lot of people, and listen, I take it all on. We talk about race, I believe, here in a unique way because I associate it and attach it, race and racism and sexism, to a particular group of people, to your point, that feel as though that their whiteness gives them privilege over others. And when that gets put out there, people get a little itchy in the collar, because typically, as the phrase goes, when someone is called out, they holler. I had to clean that up a little bit because I didn't want to say something that would have been disrespectful to our wonderful pets. But the point I'm making, you know what I was going to say. The point that I want to make in this is that in the conversation around deportation, what I'm not seeing are people being deported out of this country who are not here legally at this point because their visa status from the country in Europe that they hail from has expired. That means that they're here illegal. Now, have they done something illegal, like rob a store or commit a felony or some other heinous crime? Maybe not. But they're still here by definition of what the whiteness of the Trump administration wants to put on people illegally.
Mm-hmm.
So that just goes to show America, this has nothing to do with the illegality or not from a federal level. It has to do with deporting people that don't look like the quote-unquote mainstream white male American in this country. That's the truth, y'all.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it also has to do with the reality that the birth rate of white babies and children in this country has declined significantly. And you also had a large swath of the white population who was affected by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And even prior to that, I mean, discussions in the early 2000s around, the traditionalists are driving out. Well, who were the traditionalists? They were mainly white immigrants who had come here, but also white citizens who were here as a result of migrating from Europe in the 19th century, in the early 20th century. And so there's been this decline and preoccupation with we need more white babies, which is why even now you have the President Donald Trump, espousing this idea that we can just make Canada the 51st state. Why? Because Canada is predominantly white. And if we are able to just create more white citizens overnight, we can cure and solve this problem. But you are absolutely right. The goal is to get rid of black and brown people. It always has been. There are two books that I reference when we, for example, look back into the early 20th century at the Supreme Court ruling, Buck v. Bell, where they were saying that in that ruling they wanted to get rid of people who were unfit, undesirable, the defective, as they called them, and they had this plan to basically get rid of 15 million Americans. They wanted to do what Hitler did, essentially, in Germany. And the books are race traits and tendencies of the American Negro, and then also the passing of the Great Race by Madison Grant. Both of those books talked about basically getting rid of non-white people through genocidal tactics, essentially creating laws and policies that would confine those certain groups, black people, to ghettos and keep medical care away from them. And they espoused essentially that within 100 years, by roughly the early 2000s, that if black people were put in ghettos and disallowed access to opportunity, disallowed access to resources, municipal resources, that they would be extinct by the early 2000s. Yeah. And I think that the plan has always been to follow that plan of action, that course of action, but they're using different strategies and methods to do it. And so what we see right now happening with deportation is an attempt to ensure that they can slow down the browning of this country, and they want to get rid of the people whose humanity they do not value. And that has always been the case, dating back to the bills that began to appear in Congress in the early 1800s, where they wanted to send blacks back to Africa. And I think people should research the Back to Africa movement to understand the history behind this.
One of the things, and thank you for that, Dante. I've said this to so many wonderful guests like you. I stopped taking notes and just listen because of what the professor is saying. Here's the other part. Let's come back to something that might seem very in the weeds, and we're gonna kind of move our direction in wrapping up this segment, because I love having you on every few weeks. The birth rate conversation. You guys have to understand why this is so integrated into the conversation around DEI. Let me give this a really quick explanation. I know that the professor can tie this one up for me. The birth rate in America of to statistically white babies, if you will, has declined, and they can go back and put a date on it almost, and that's from looking at the new legislation that came in with the woman's right to vote and then affirmative action in the 70s, which meant that the highest benefactor of those bits of legislation were white women. The birth rate went down because at that point, more white women were in the workplace and voting. So proportionate to that, then comes this pushback from white men in America that said, oh no, we can't have that because our biggest competitor isn't black folks or other folks of color, it's white women. And then you see this explosion of success and successful white women in the workplace, which should be the case for all women. But DEI and affirmative action, as many white voters voted for this current administration to get rid of people of color, in actuality, it's now come back to harm the people that you didn't want to get harmed, which are the ones that look like you in the mirror. And that's the crazy sort of, wow, did you really mess around and have you really messed around and found out what you're actually doing? Because taking away benefits like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the public education, Department of Education, and the list goes on, is hurting the group of people who thought that it was going to hurt other folks. Am I right or wrong?
Sure. I agree with that assessment wholeheartedly. I also want to call into here that, before I think it was 1974, there's like a bill, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. One of these bills, white women and other women could not get credit on their own. Yep. They had to have the signature of their husbands. And so I think prior to that, them being able to gain assets or acquire more assets in terms of going out and getting loans for property, credit cards, things of that sort, and gaining that type of independence, and also being able to major in certain areas of focus that they weren't able to major before when it came to like college, their college experiences. All of these things contributed to this degree of independence that we see happening with women in the 1970s, the 1980s, 1990s, et cetera. And you're right. Women do not feel as inclined to be married or partnered anymore, and most of them begin to focus on their careers. And so
as they should, and should be allowed without obstruction from us guys. Sorry, Dante. Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
And they're not required anymore, or don't feel the need to remain in either emotionally or physically abusive relationships. And so you see a lot of, the divorce rate, increasing, and all of these variables occur, which affect then the reproductive activity of these women. And so what do white men do? We're now in 2025, and we have laws in states where these state legislatures have passed bills that say that women have to carry to term the babies of their rapists, and or if they are, victims of incest or anything, if they're young girls, they still have to carry these babies. They still are being forced to have these children. And we saw this before when we look at the history of white men raping black women and forcing black women to reproduce with their rapists, whether it was black men that they were grooming to rape these women during the period of slavery in this country, or they themselves were raping these women. They were requiring these women to carry to term the babies of their rapists. And we're right back at square one. I think this country and the people who run it need to take a real good look at themselves in terms of a lack of a moral and humane conscience. It's just a conscience. It's just not there. And I am disgusted by what I see happening in this country. My spirit and my heart is very aggrieved by it, and I just don't know where this is headed. It is causing me great despair and grief, and I know many others who feel the same.
Yeah, Dante, and listen, man, I'm going to say this to you as from one guy to another, but specifically from one black man to another. We live in a constant state of PTSD, and we're going to win this fight. We remember whose shoulders we stand on, and if they could fight through like they did, you and I sure as hell can fight through in the trouble that we see now and on the horizon. So one of the things that I think is our superpower is having these conversations and connecting with folks that know that this is truthful. And that's a power that we have that we can't let go of. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is your willingness to dig into this and get into the weeds and get into the quote unquote the nerdy parts of it in a positive way. And that's your superpower. So don't let that go, man. I'm here to let you know that we have each other's back collectively as a community of all communities. And that's why I so oftentimes refer to my Caucasian brothers and sisters, my Asian brothers and sisters, my Muslim and Jewish and all the rest. We're in this fight together. We get to fight back. They don't get to take that away from us. We let them take it away from us, but they don't just take it away from us. And so, I appreciate your work, man. I appreciate your dedication and your enlightenment to these conversations and topics. So thanks for being with us again, Dante. I'm always honored to have you with us. And you get me riled up again, man. And I hate you for that because you get me riled up, man.
Thank you, my friend. I truly appreciate it. If I can invite your guests just one more time to go to DanteKing.com. Please get the book. There's also a docuseries out that explores many of the themes in the book. So please support it too. And then I also offer classes on my website. Thank you.
That's great. Dante, thanks for being with us, man. I appreciate you. Stay safe, and we will talk again in the next few weeks, okay?
Thanks, my friend. Take care.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Dante digs in deep, guys, and this is part of the conversation, which is why I wanted to make sure that you guys understand the dotted lines. You know, part of the country elected the people that really are deficient and mediocre at best. Circling back to the beginning of the show, President Obama tried to tell us that Governor Pritzker is standing in the void right now. These are exceptional people, or you could say regular folks doing exceptional things. Representative Crockett is another one of those voices. And kudos to Bernie and AOC for being out there and saying, not this time. We're going to start fighting now. We're not going to wait till we get into the midterm cycle. And so I really ask you guys to do this work. I know it's not easy, you know, but it's simple. And State Senator Cristina Castro said it best. Get involved, make the phone calls, send us the emails, let us know what your issues are. And whether it be on a state level, like what she does, or it be on a national level. And the national stuff is, you know, she had her take, and I had to ask her the question, being one that's fighting for a bill that's going to hopefully better the educational environment for our children. I wanted to get her take on the national piece. And so I'm a big advocate of us fighting. And I know, like I said, it's not easy, but it is simple. And people like Dante, who are constantly in the fight, are an example of one of the things that comes from that fight, and that's, you know, your ability to put out work that other people can share, like I talk about on every show. So, guys, I appreciate you being with us today, and I know that I take you all over the map sometimes, but the primary goal, the target, that bullseye, is to move us forward. I'm committed to that with Choose Views, and we at WCPT are committed to that across the board. And we know that the fight is not an easy one, but it is a simple one. So just trust us in that space and get involved, and stay involved if you already are, and find some more people to pull into the fight with you, because we don't have to do it alone. We do get the blessing as we get to do it together. Tomorrow we'll have our good friend, you know who I'm talking about, that guy from the Hoosier State, Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63, and we'll also be talking with Representative Edgar Gonzalez Jr., talking a little bit about some of the things that are going on with gambling. So that'll be great to have. It'll be great to have both of them on our show. You have to stay tuned for who? Stephanie Miller's show, my radio sister on the West Coast. Tom Hartman's show, the professor of everything progressive. Make sure to tune in to Joan Today, live, local, and progressive. And Patty Vasquez, my bookend that's driving you home. This is Choose Views. Take a deep breath. We'll see you tomorrow. And make it count.
Are you tired of talking to yourself? We can get you an audience on the radio. You can produce and host your own radio show on one of our 2 stations. Please call 773-79